thought it'd be interesting today to talk about formality in both the conversational design and, more importantly, dialogue. So formality in the conversational design is about the structure of the conversation and making it very formal and very just formality really. So it follows a very standard formal conversational design. And that's important to get continuity, to ensure the audience understands how to use the UX. You can get a bit fancy with that kind of thing and make it a little bit different, just to kind of spice it up. But I think it also depends on your audience and what they're expecting in their formality with conversational design. If they're not a constant user of messaging apps, for instance, then you've got to keep that very structured and formal. That's all I'll say about kind of formality in the UX design for chatbots and conversational AI. Where it really comes into play, I think, is in dialogue design. So it's how you start the conversation. So how formal that is. Is it very formal? Are you very much a professional services business that has to have that formality? Or are you a fun, relaxed brand where formality is not important? It's more about speaking to your customers in a fun, extravagant way, and that fits better with the brand. So this is something I learned the hard way, is to kind of get this clarified by the client very early on in the process. Early on, I would take a lead from the company website, but you've got to remember that a company website's text is written with what would you say, with SEO in mind often. It's often kind of third person, whereas conversation is first person. It's often done by a copywriter in a certain style, and websites copy tends to not have a lot of personality. Don't get me wrong, you might book the trend, or you might have a client that books the trend, but I would say 90% of the time, taking the lead from the website is not the way forward. What you really need to do is have that conversation with a client before you even start the build, definitely before you start the dialogue. So it's simple things like, how do we refer to our customers? How do we refer to ourselves? How do we refer to our products and services? How do we refer to our colleagues? How do we greet people? Is it hello every single time, or do we have variations? How do we end the conversation? Is it a very formal type of ending, or is it something that's a bit more relaxed? Do we use abbreviations? Do we use corporate speak? Do we use slang or tech speak? All of that kind of forms this bubble of where you are on the formality scale. It's never going to be a point, so non-formal to formal. It's never going to be a point. It's going to be more of a bubble along that. If you broke it into 1 to 10 on the scale, how formal are we? That's a good starting place with a client. Kind of get a feel for them, and that's a good, on a scale of non-formal to formal, where would you say the conversation should sit? If that scale was 1 to 10, and get your customer to just give you an indication. That starts the conversation really well. And then you can kind of dive into some of the actual dialogue. And I would say, even after you've made that decision with a client, is you create some dialogue and just get them to check it over. And then you just need to record what was decided early on in the project, because you do not want to be 20 days into the dialogue design and then come back and say that's not what we agreed. So you need to get that agreed, because you're having to go back into that dialogue. You're having to change everything, the tone, the flow, the speed. Everything is really hanging around on that formality. And very much so if you're deciding to give your chatbot personality, because personality plus formality, it's a great mix if you can get it right. But if your client is giving you the wrong information or you've interpreted it incorrectly, then you'll be well off the mark. So formality, give it some thought when you're doing your next chatbot or conversational AI project. And if you're like me and you used to take a lead from the website, don't do that. Speak to the client, have the conversation, and make sure that you are both on the same. You both understand exactly where on that formal scale the conversation, the dialogue needs to be. If you've got any thoughts on formality, I'd be interested to hear. It's something I think about a lot. It's something I take seriously when I'm designing dialogue. But I'm open to ideas of how you can have that conversation with your customer and how you can make that process better for the customer. So so they can understand the value. Speak soon. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.